And here we go. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to listen to our little piece here. We're going to be talking about the Educator's Health Benefit Fairness Act, aka the Chapter 78 relief bill that's making its way through the state legislature and is expected to be passed in short order. I'm Giovanni Mancini from Treadstone Risk Management, and with me today is John DiMartino, President of Liberty Benefit Advisors. John, thanks for taking the time to be here today.
Gio, thanks for having me here remotely while we're all kind of quarantined in during this pandemic.
So everyone's going to be talking about this over the next few days, and in the coming weeks, there's going to be major changes. And as you're going to probably talk about a little bit, this is some of the most major legislation that we've had in the health benefits world since Chapter 78 itself. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, it's no secret, the NJEA has been backing bills to get some sort of Chapter 78 relief pretty much since the bill was passed, right?
Right.
So now that we have kind of the triple play in the legislature, and of course with Governor Murphy, they've been able to work hand in glove with that legislature to figure out some sort of solution. And that solution is the Educator's Health Benefit Fairness Act. And really what it does is, for most people, it doesn't change a whole lot about the way businesses run right now. But what it does do is it offers two health plans, the Educator's Health Plan and the Garden State Plan, in the next 2 years that can be offered, well, actually, you have to offer it. And instead of contributing on the Chapter 78 scale or whatever scale your local CBA has now, it's going to be tied to salary and predetermined salary amounts. That's the crux of what this law is about.
Right. So when is the change going into effect, and are there going to be any changes to the calendar year or the fiscal year, and how this is going to affect them from a fiscal standpoint?
Definitely. So the first thing I want to do is just take a look at changes that are taking place on July 1st, 2020. And that's right, 2020, not 2021, not 2 years from now. These are basically effective immediately. So July 1st, 2020, the first thing that's going to happen that's interesting is the state plan is going to transition from a calendar year renewal, where they renew on 1/1 of every year, to a July 1st or fiscal year renewal. So that's big change number one. Of course, along with that, for July 1st, 2020, everyone is going to be hosting a special open enrollment period where employees are going to be able to elect whatever options are available to them. And everybody will have, for the first time, the Educator's Health Plan. And I say whatever plans are offered to them because that is of particular interest. If you are an SEHBP participant, the direct 1525, 2030, 2035, HMO 1525, HMO 2030, HMO 2035, and everyone's favorite high deductible health plan are all going to be eliminated as options.
Direct zero as well.
July, and direct zero as well. I almost forgot about that one. And for a July 1st effective date, the three plans that will be offered in the SEHBP are going to be the Direct 10, the Direct 15, and the Educator's Health Plan. So major changes on July 1st if you are an SEHBP participant.
Interesting. So what will end up happening for any of the new hires? Is it so everyone's going to have this special enrollment period? They're all going to have the opportunity to make their changes to whether they pick the new plan or if they stay in the 10 or the 15. But if you're a new hire, is there anything crazy that's going to be going on with them?
Right. So if you are a new hire, new hire means different things. So the way we interpret it today, and we're looking for guidance from our legal team, but it's a new NJEA member on or after July 1st, 2020. Right. So somebody could be new to your district, but they may have been an NJEA member for 20 years. So they wouldn't necessarily, this law wouldn't apply to them in that any NJEA new hire on or after July 1st, 2020 is mandated. There is no option. You have to go into the Educator's Health Plan. And that's whether you're in the state plan or not in the state plan. If you're a new hire to the NJEA, you're going right over into that Educator's Health Plan.
Right. So at the 1/1 renewal for 1/1/2020, if you were on the Aetna plan, they were moving everybody over to Horizon. It was a passive enrollment, right? So if you were on one plan, you were going to go on to the equivalent of that same plan here. What happens if you don't fill out the enrollment forms in this circumstance?
Right. So what I can say is a few things. There's a lot of unknowns, particularly this is a very aggressive time frame. If
Okay.
we had not been plagued by the coronavirus, this still would have been extremely ambitious. And the fact that we are currently dealing with this crisis is certainly going to exacerbate those fears. So the way it's written right now is that there will be a special open enrollment period somewhere between now and July 1st. There's a little exception where they can say we can push it to August 1st if we need to, which I think was a concession most likely for the coronavirus.
Right.
And by doing that, you have to run just your typical open enrollment, right? Anyone who wants to elect a plan change or wants to keep their current plan needs to fill out an enrollment form. So if you're currently enrolled in the Direct 10 and you'd like to stay in the Direct 10, you have to fill out an enrollment form electing the Direct 10. For anybody who does not fill out an application, you're going to be stuffed into the Educator's Health Plan. And as you know, benefit elections made during open enrollment are enforced for 12 consecutive months. So it's likely that they're not going to be allowing you to swap back to the Direct 10.
Understood. That makes sense. Now, you do have the ability to buy up as a new NJEA member, or do you not have the ability to buy up to the Direct 10 or Direct 15?
No. So as it stands right now, you do not have the option to buy up. So if you're new to the NJEA on or after 7/1/2020, it's Educator's Health Plan.
Interesting.
Now, I want to point out
go ahead.
I was going to say, I wanted to point out that we just spoke a lot about SEHBP participating boards of education, but also this law affects anyone with a private plan. So anyone with a private plan, those new hire rules that we just described apply. So even in a private plan, you have to scoot everybody to the Educator's Health Plan who is a new hire to the NJEA on or after 7/1/2020. So that doesn't change. What does change is you have some private school district, or private plans where the Direct 10, the Direct 15, and maybe the 2030 is offered. Maybe the 2035 of the HMO. This goes back to the old, if you like your plan, you can keep it type thing. So the plans that you have in force right now are the plans that may continue to be offered after July 1st, 2020, but you have to add the Educator's Health Plan.
Okay, makes sense. So like essentially an equivalent to that. So it's through the length of the CBA, right? You'll be able to keep the plan that you have.
It seems like you'll be able to keep the plans that you currently have in perpetuity, as the way the law is written. Now here's another little caveat. In the event that you had maybe the 2030 as your base plan and you wanted to add the Direct 10 as a buy-up option, you're no longer allowed to do that. So any additional health plans that are offered need to have a premium that is less than the Educator's Health Plan.
So is the delineation line the total premium amount, or is it the coverage amount? It seems like it's a premium amount, right?
Seems like the premium amount based on the way things are written right now.
Okay. All right. So then everyone's favorite topic to talk about is the employee contribution pieces. How are these going to change from the Direct 10 and Direct 15 plans, and then every other plan as we know them now, to this new Educator's plan?
Yep. So for SEHBP participants, if you're in the Direct 10 or Direct 15, that's going to be subject to your current CBA. So if you're contributing just regular Chapter 78, then that's where you continue to contribute to the Direct 10 and Direct 15. If you are outside of the SEHBP with a private plan, again, your local CBA is still going to dictate what you contribute to all of your health plans except the new one, the Educator's Health Plan, right? So not a ton of change there. Where there is substantial change and where there's a huge benefit for Chapter 78 relief is in the Educator's Health Plan. So that program is going to be tied to salary instead of being tied to premium, which if anybody who's been in negotiations over the last 6 or 7 years knows that that's what every local bargaining unit wanted, right? It's no secret. So they're able to achieve it with this health plan. And that grid doesn't look too different from a Chapter 78 grid. And in the notes of this video, we have a couple blog posts where they can check it out. But the idea is they're contributing anywhere at a minimum 1.5% of salary, so that is the floor still. And then at most, they're contributing between, give me a second here, I think the highest is 7.5%, and that's for family coverage for those with $100,000.
Family coverage, you can get up to a 7.15 between $100,000 and $125,000. Now, the 1.5% of salary, there is another plan that will be getting offered in 2021, right? It's essentially a New Jersey only network version of the Educator's Health Plan, and that one I believe will have the ability to hit the floor. Right now, the lowest you can get as a percentage of salary is a single between $0 and $40,000 in salary. It's 1.65%. And I think that that other plan option, that New Jersey only one, will allow you probably to get to the floor of 1.5% of salary.
Definitely. And, you know, in that program, if you have single coverage in what's called the Garden State Health Plan, you're going to be contributing 1.5% of salary up until you make about $80,000. And then after that, single coverage caps that at 1.79. So, you know, from a Chapter 78 relief standpoint, that's huge. But I do want to take a second to just talk about what the Garden State Plan is, and then we'll talk about the benefits of the two. So the Garden State Plan, the idea is very much so thrown it way back to the 70s, the idea of an HMO. So you have a network. In this case, it's New Jersey only, which obviously supports local businesses, local hospitals, local healthcare systems. And of course, it's worth noting that in New Jersey, we do have some of the best hospital systems in the country. So we have access to phenomenal care right here. And the other thing that they've been touting, and I don't really know how true this is that New Jersey hospitals tend to cost less than our neighbors in Pennsylvania, New York, and Delaware. I have not seen anything to support that. In fact, you know, anyone who wants to reach out, I have a lot of data that suggests otherwise. But that's the idea, is we keep people in New Jersey, and it's likely that, you know, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield and the state plan, you know, could potentially negotiate better discounts for that program. That's not without the realm of possibility. One of the things that I get asked a lot about the Garden State Plan is, well, what if I need a surgery and the only person in the country that can do it is in New York or Delaware, or, you know, Chicago? And they do have an exception. So if there is some sort of care that you cannot receive in New Jersey for some reason, and we don't know exactly how that's defined yet, but you are eligible to receive that care from a provider outside of New Jersey who can actually perform that surgery or service or whatever it may be.
Enough.
Now, with that said, you know, we talked a little bit about, you know, the Educator's Health Plan. It's a new plan, has to be offered, tied to salary, July 1st, 2020. Garden State Plan is the same exact plan as the Educator's Health Plan, except it's NJ only. That's going to be offered 7/1/2021. But I do want to touch on the benefits that are offered by both of these. Because they are interesting.
Yeah, about a year ago or so, we were running around talking about you know, the plans that were offered inside the SEHBP and that Direct Zero plan. And, you know, when we were going back and forth with some of our clients, one of the things we had mentioned is there's three critical areas where there's money to be saved, and it happens to be in that out-of-network piece, the percentage of Medicare that they pay out.
So, apologies, I had a work-from-home moment with the dog barking in the background, but he is being taken care of by my wife now.
Excellent. So let's jump right back into where we were. So we're talking a little bit about the plan design themselves for the Educator's Health Plan and the Garden State Plan. They do mirror something that we've seen before, specifically with three main components and how they were different than the other 10 plans that were offered in the SEHBP. There's one plan that we have been a bit familiar with that was recently revealed to us, that Direct Zero plan. We talked about some of the differences and what made it special, why it was able to drive down some of the costs. Talk a little bit about that.
Definitely. So with these health plans, what they're trying to do, and what's become very clear, is they're trying to steer members towards in-network care, right? There's a big emphasis on in-network care. So with the Direct Zero, what they did was they said, all right, basically, if you stay in network, it's just free. Everything's going to be a $0 copay except durable medical equipment and ambulance care. Everything else covered at 100%. So huge incentive. Now, which was great if you're staying in network. But what we've seen is that the ways in which that they were looking to reduce the cost of care were on the out-of-network side. The way out-of-network works is they typically benchmark how much a doctor should be getting paid. And the most popular benchmark is Medicare. So these out-of-network doctors will get paid on a multiple of Medicare. So in the Direct 10 and Direct 15, that multiple is right around 300 to 400% of what Medicare would pay. In the Direct Zero and now in the Educator's Health Plan, that multiple is brought down to 200% of Medicare. So one of the things that's going to be happening is you can still go get out-of-network care, but the likelihood of that provider balance billing you, which is where you paid your deductible, you've paid your coinsurance, but they still come after you for more money, increases. So because of that,
people should be aware of that.
Right.
People should be aware of
definitely going to want to
if you were going in. You're going to run into a bit of an issue here where, some of the doctors you had been seeing are now going to just be receiving less in reimbursement. And as a result of that, there could be an uncomfortable conversation that an enrollee or a subscriber is going to have with the doctor about, potentially having to be balance billed and seeing a higher out-of-pocket cost for them for the same level of service that they had been receiving under the Direct 10 or the Direct 15.
Exactly. So just the way that there's a huge incentive to use in-network providers in the Educator's Health Plan, there's a similar incentive to use generic drugs.
Okay.
So one of the other ways in which they're really looking to save money is by mandating that when a generic drug is available, you have to choose the generic instead of the brand name.
What happens if you don't?
We know, if you don't, there's a penalty, and that penalty is typically, we have to see how this falls, but the penalty is typically the difference in cost between the generic and the brand name. And if you know anything about brand name drugs, they're wildly expensive. So that delta should be pretty big.
Right.
Now, of course, we know within the industry, and I always make a point to buy even generic Benadryl, for example, because I can't be a hypocrite. But the idea is, the drug is 98% the same. The only difference is the filler in which that they use to, make it a pill form. The active ingredient has to be the same. It has to go through an FDA approval process. So from that standpoint, these drugs are safe, they're effective, and for the most part, switching to a generic drug just has to happen. If for some reason you have to have a brand name drug, and if for some reason a generic exists and you can't take it because maybe you're allergic to the filler or something like that, then you're going to be eligible to take the brand name drug still. So there are some exceptions, although those exceptions are rare.
Right. So those are our first two that we have, that out-of-network reimbursement to doctors. You have the pharmacy changes for that closed formulary. You have the mandatory generics. What else is going to be a little bit different from the Direct 10 and Direct 15?
Yeah. There's a few more out-of-network benefits that are getting extra special treatment. For example, routine lab care. They're going to get, instead of using a multiple of Medicare, they're just going to pay for it as though it's in-network. So if Horizon's discount, would be 50%, and the total paid to get an X-ray would have been, I don't know, let's call it $100. That's what they're going to pay. Or if the blood work would have cost $300 after the discount, that's what's going to be paid. So from that standpoint.
Right. And then our chiropractic, physical therapy, acupuncture, it seems like there's a looming date that's coming up where there should be some changes to the out-of-network limits for the SEHBP, right?
That's what we're seeing. So it appears as though they're going to update these limits for the Direct 10, Direct 15, and Educator's Health Plan. I'm not super confident in that yet, but that's what appears to be happening. And along those lines, essentially what they're going to be doing is what the Direct Zero did, which is where they moved to a much smaller reimbursement than maybe even what, a multiple of Medicare would have been. Because of that, we expect a lot of backlash from chiropractors, physical therapists, acupuncturists. And of course, if you remember, Horizon was tinkering with the idea of transitioning their utilization management vendor to a vendor who's known for being very aggressive, particularly with chiropractic, physical therapy, and acupuncture. And those organizations banded together and actually stopped Horizon from adopting that utilization management vendor. But it seems as though, none of them are really aware of what's happening now, which is an even bigger issue, particularly because school teachers tend to be some of their biggest customers.
Okay. So when we're talking about money and what this means to a school district, I can't help but I'd be remiss to not mention that when we were going through some of our negotiations with clients, it was pretty obvious that the Direct Zero was between, let's say, 15 and 17% cheaper than a Direct 10 and Direct 15 when we were comparing them premium-wise. If we
Right.
look at the beginning of this bill, I think that Plan A was supposed to be 15% lower. This, we don't have the exact numbers yet on what the total cost is for this plan, I believe. But when I take a look at it and I compare it to the Direct Zero, there are some notable differences in the total coverages. You will see an actual copay as far as in-network treatment. You'll see a $10 copay for your primary care. You'll see $15 for specialists, whereas those were both zero in the Direct Zero plan. And we also are looking at a little bit higher of a deductible, so maximum out of pockets are a bit higher than the Direct Zero. So while we like to compare it for those three major changes that were brought about with the Direct Zero for the first time, there are differences in just the in-network coverage as well between the Educator's Health Plan and the Direct Zero as well.
Definitely. And Gio, I think, people are going to see that there are some pretty big differences there. But, the difference between really the Educator's Health Plan and Direct Zero program, because they have a lot of similarities, is that the Direct Zero program, employees still contribute to on a Chapter 78 schedule. On the Educator's Health Plan, there is substantial financial relief. And actually, we'll be coming out with some calculators so employees can determine whether it makes sense for them and their families to choose that plan as well.
Makes sense.
One of the other things that gets brought up regarding this potential law is additional reporting requirements.
Those are fun.
As if we don't have to report on enough things as it relates to employee benefit programs, we're now going to be forced to track the healthcare cost savings, right? So they're implementing this new law. They want people to trickle over to the Educator's Health Plan, and then they want to determine how much is actually being saved. So every year, and we don't know what this report looks like yet, but this report will be due, pretty close to the end or right after the next fiscal year. And that report's really going to be total cost of benefits, the employee's contribution, and the net cost to the school district. So in those cases, we'll see, did we bring down total premiums? Did we bring down employees' contributions? Did we bring down the employer's contributions? And if we did that, obviously this law is successful. If the report doesn't show that, not so much.
So when are these going to be due, these reports?
Looks like they're due no later than 60 days following each enrollment period. So
they're really looking at, the state's looking to track how much savings they were able to generate from this legislation, I believe, right? This is something that they're, of course, going to look to publicize and talk about total savings that they were able to provide, not only to the taxpayer, but also to the EA as well, the NJEA as well members.
Definitely. That's really what we see there. It's just a way to track. And to be fair, most of the payroll companies or Ben admin systems or HRIS systems that most school districts use are already tracking this data. So it should be relatively easy to fill out this reporting, hopefully.
So to our districts that are in negotiations or about to go into negotiations, do we have any advice for them? What do we have available for them as far as tools that they can use? And what are some things that they should know about as they go in? Because I think a lot of the unions and the education associations were kind of putting off some of their serious talks until this really got legs and made its way through legislation.
I think, the first thing I'll say is for every BOE or anybody subject to this law, your board attorney is now your best friend relating to this law. You and I can give, professional advice and guidance, but at the end of the day, we can't provide legal opinions, unfortunately. So with that said, I'll give you my take, but always ask your school board attorney what they think. So anyone who's going into negotiations whose CBA ends on 7/1/2020, if you are in the state plan, your work's pretty much done. They may tussle over Chapter 78 relief for the Direct 10 and Direct 15, but as a district, you're under no obligation to provide that. And at this point, I would say, well, the NJEA has already decided for you. The Educator's Health Plan is where the Chapter 78 relief is. If you want Chapter 78 relief, go get it. For anybody who's not in the SEHBP, similar situation, under no obligation to give further Chapter 78 relief, and really never were. But you have to offer that Educator's Health Plan or an equivalent plan. with tied to salary. So for the most part, you know, you can tussle over Chapter 78 relief on Direct 10, 15, or whatever other plans that you have in force. But again, I just think that would be spinning everyone's wheels. The other thing to keep in mind, if you are not in the state plan, because obviously in the state plan, you have no control over what plans are offered anyway. But if you're outside the state plan, you know, you have to remember that you can't create a new health plan unless it costs less than the educator's health plan. So, you know, maybe if you wanted to bring back a version of like the 2035 plan, for example, unless it's already in force and active and has people enrolled in it, you're not going to be able to do this.
Right. Do you think we're going to see a migration of schools to the state plan as a result of the legislation?
I think we might, Gio, honestly. I mean, a lot of it's going to be subject to the collective bargaining agreement and the ways in which that's interpreted. Right? Some CBAs are going to say, you know, the benefits that need to be offered need to be equal to or better than the benefits offered, you know, by the state plan on, you know, 1/1/2019, right? So then by going into the state plan on 7/1/2020, you may be in a situation where, you know, the 1525 is gone, the Direct Zero is gone. Those are plans that people were enrolled in. And it may be seen as not equal to or better than. Now, typically, that's not the case. What we find for most school districts is that they can unilaterally decide to jump into the state plan and then take whatever the state plan has to offer. So that is certainly something that I would say you need to talk to your board attorney about, the language in your contract, and whether or not you can potentially scoot to the SEHBP.
Excellent. All right, so we're going to be making available tools to all of our clients and anybody that really has any interest in it to help them model what this plan or legislation will look like over the next couple of years. If they want to help incorporate it into their negotiations or they'd like us to assist them in any way, we'll be available. But thank you, everybody, for taking the time and coming out. John, thank you for talking with me. And again, we'll have our contact information in the link below. And any questions, we're more than happy to help out.
Excellent. Thanks, you. Appreciate your time.
Take it easy.